And then we can go back and forth and we can see where we align and where we agree to disagree, and that's absolutely fine.
Are you an Ahmadi by any chance?
Am I a Mahdi?
Yeah.
What's that?
Sect of Islam.
A Mahdi? Never heard of it.
Ahmadiyya.
Oh, Ahmadiyya? No.
Okay.
Did you speak to somebody who's Ahmadiyya?
Yeah, I've got a good friend who's Ahmadiyya.
Oh, how was that conversation?
Wonderful, he's wonderful.
Yeah?
Really good guy. I've done quite a few live streams with him on the internet.
Okay, interesting.
What sects do you follow?
I'm just a Muslim. Yeah. It's simple, yeah.
Do I have lipstick on my teeth?
No.
Okay.
So with Ahmadiyya, the reason why they identify themselves as Ahmadiyya because they're not accepted by mainstream Muslims.
I know, they're persecuted.
Well, everyone's persecuted, isn't it? I mean, you claimed you were persecuted because of your, appearance on, social media, and you're getting messages and stuff like this, which is not good. But I mean, persecuted doesn't mean that has to become your identity. So with them, they may be persecuted, but the discussions need to be on creedal matters, like prove your faith. That's a right that you have to ask me. Like, okay, what about this? I'm not sure about this. With respect, can you prove this? And then the burden of proof will be on me, and if you say something, I'll be able to kind of ask you. So Zarina, yeah?
Yes.
So Zarina, you're aware of what's going on. I mean, the thing that's the most pertinent now is what we're seeing, in the news with regards to what's going on in Gaza, what's going on with this war. But the thing that kind of appeals to us is you have a group of people that are, I don't think it can be argued that they are probably the most oppressed people on the planet at this moment in time. But yet, when you see clips of them, they're raising their finger and they're saying, Allah is enough for us. Yeah, God is enough for us.
What
Despite...
group would this be?
Sorry?
What group of people would this
Gaza. In Palestine?
Yeah.
So we're seeing, obviously, kids being blown to bits and all that sort of stuff. Strong military power oppressing a minority. But without getting into the politics, which you can do if you want, but people that are being persecuted, yet they are calling towards God and saying God is sufficient. Yet they are deriving their power and their strength from God. And you were saying off camera as well that, online, sometimes the hate you're saying gets to you as well. So I guess what I'm saying is this is a good place for us to start, for us to be able to answer where do we draw our energy from? What's a strong source for us to draw our energy from? Because if we rely upon ourselves, sometimes we've got good days, sometimes we've got bad days. Yeah, sometimes we're weak, sometimes we're strong. So we can't rely upon ourselves for that. So what do you think about this idea of deriving your faith from God? What do you think about this?
I'm actually a very, very strong believer in God. I'm a very, very spiritual person, and I would like the people watching to know that for me, faith in God is very, very important. I don't follow any religion. I consider myself a spiritual person. But for me, I truly believe that a collective shared love and belief in God is very, very important. And I think that a lot of people maybe don't even understand what God is. Everyone tries to kind of define God. Some people define it in a very anthropocentric way. My definition of God is simply love, balance, the highest frequency of love, harmony, timelessness, all of these things. This is how I would describe God really, as balance, as infinite balance. If you think of the infinity sign, for me this is what God really is. And I think that when we are in a place of balance, that's really when we are able to then sit down and be at peace and find God. And I think that probably the largest problems right now with the Western world, and in this park as well, I really appreciate talking to you because you're very calm, but there's a lot of antagonism, there's a lot of cruelty in this park, a lot of people that seem more interested in stirring up drama and stirring up arguments and hatred as opposed to wanting to actually bring peace and bring some balance. And we know the Palestinian-Israel conflict is a very big problem right now. And I truly believe that one of these potential solutions for the Palestine and Israel conflict could be potentially to have a one-state solution, because with a two-state solution, I'm not sure that they'll be able to resolve their differences. But with a one-state solution, because really it should be about the people, it should be about the struggling welfare of the people, not the we almost need to forget about the conflicts going on above and actually look and think, look, what about the safety of the people? What about the safety of the children and all of those who are suffering? And, you know, a few weeks ago, I came here holding a sign saying Free Palestine. And the reason why I said that was because it wasn't really to do with religion. It was because, look at all these children are being persecuted. You know, it's not because of Palestine. And I know that, you know, Mr. Andrew Tate has donated a lot of money to a lot of countries, including to the Palestinian cause, which a lot of people are not talking about. You know, the mainstream media doesn't really seem to care about what Mr. Tate is doing, how he gives, I think it's like $25 million a year to charity with Tate Pledge, which is incredible. He's just an amazing guy. And for me, this is an act of godliness, you know, and I really do see Mr. Tate and maybe myself and you as boss as well. I think that we're actually all working as servants of God. I think that what we're trying to do is, you know, where we're trying, because there's a lot of evil and a lot of badness in the world, and you know, the only way that can be countered is through acts of love. And people don't even know what is an act of love. Like, people would say that me holding a sign saying feminism is trash is an act of hatred, which is quite funny. A lot of, especially young women, would accuse me of being a hateful person. But the reality is I say feminism is trash every week, every Sunday. My message is very clear. It's trash because it's destroying those natural biological gender roles that are ordained between men and women, and it's destroying those roles as saying that men should act like women, that women should I talk louder?
Sorry?
Should I talk louder?
No, I'm asking him for the umbrella.
That, you know, it's telling people that men should act like women, that women should act like men, and that we shouldn't have, you know, these kind of classic feminine and masculine, classic femininity and classic masculinity, which I advocate for. And, you know, being a feminine woman, being gentle, being caring. Obviously, some of my disagreements regarding Islam would be, you know, I don't want to wear a hijab, I don't want to wear a burqa. I like, you know, dressing the way I dress. But, you know, that aside, I think that, you know, the roles that a man and a woman are supposed to play in society are really being destroyed because feminism came along and said, oh, women, you're being oppressed, and men, you're oppressing women. And it turned male and female relations into a war zone. And for me, this is evil. I truly believe feminism is truly, truly evil. That's why I say what I do. And everything I say comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of, look, I want men and women to get back together. I want to rebuild society. I want to fix the West. I don't want us to be losing that sense of love. And I look at all these religions, they all seem to be in conflict with each other. And I truly believe that a shared love of God could be something that might be able to have people start to get along again. Because I think that's what all the religions really believe at the end of the day, right? We want to have a shared love of God and connect to and love the divine.
Would you say that you are a seeker of truth?
Depends what you mean by truth.
What's right? What's right and what's wrong?
Yeah,
The
I would say
distinguish.
so.
Yeah. So when we're talking about God, if somebody says there's one God, somebody says there's 7 gods, somebody says that God is a tree, all 3 of them can't be right, isn't it?
No, I think that God is a really all-encompassing force. I mean, my worldview is very pantheistic, so the worldview I have is that God encompasses everything and oneness, and
that's fine.
What we see are actually part of God's creation, like the trees, the nature. This is actually all part of God's broader creation.
Okay, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, if somebody says, for example, 1 + 1 is 1, somebody says 1 + 1 is a triangle, somebody says 1 + 1 is a tree, there's one correct answer, isn't it? Logically speaking.
Sure.
Yeah. So then, I don't think it's raining, is it?
It's drizzling a little bit.
It should be right. Shall I keep the umbrella or? Yeah? Yeah, I can feel it, you know. This umbrella is good, mashallah. So here's the thing now. When we've identified that, okay, because what you're saying is having love, not conflicting and, you know, not persecuting each other because of religion, etc., etc. That can be done whilst adhering to a faith as well. Now, the danger or the risk of not doing so means that you're going to be merging these faiths. It's like, you know, when you're climbing up the stairs. Let's just say if I number the steps. If I'm on step 1, both feet on step 1, then if I'm trying to now put one of my foot on step 1 and step 5, I'm going to hurt myself. Yeah, because and now if somebody says, oh no, but step 4 as well, I have to put my knee on there. Have you played Twister before?
Yeah.
So you put your elbow there, you put your arm there, and you do this. It's a game. So that's how religion becomes now. You're saying, okay, that thing is right there, that thing is right there. So where you'll be able to, Zarina, you'll be upright and you'll be powerful, then you have to accept that, then you accept that bit, then you accept that bit. It becomes like you're in a game of Twister, which I know your intention is good and it's nice. And it's, you know what, it's not going to make somebody think that you're a bad person. Because what you want to do is you're seeing that, look, there's disagreements, but disagreements, Zarina, doesn't mean that all of them are now correct. Do you see? Disagreements means that you just have to analyze more and find out which one, according to objective metrics, is correct.
I don't think that it's
I'll give you an
possible to
example.
say that one religion is correct. I actually think that all religions contain their own level of truth in them, and I think that all
They
of
do,
the old
they do.
religions, especially, they're all tribal, and they were passed down through different tribes. Especially if you look at, say, people in the old days used to practice, what some would have polytheism, ancestral veneration, animism. This is what people were doing. It was really, really passed down from tribe to tribe.
But here's the thing,
It was
though.
always a very tribal thing.
I get what you're
practice.
saying. I get what you're saying. Now, here's the thing. We don't believe that Islam started 1400 years ago. We believe Islam is the path to God, Allah, and it started from the first man, from the beginning, from the get-go. Approximately 124,000 messages have been sent to different nations, to different tribes, to different peoples. But then what happens is when one prophet is sent and then he passes away, then people deviate from the message. So then you have like a corrupt understanding of a God or of the divine, and then another prophet is sent, and etc., etc. But we believe that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger, the seal. That's why you will see certain characteristics within Islam that's not present in other faiths, mostly to do with preservation. Because whilst other religions, the books can be manipulated and changed, the Quran doesn't fall prey to that. For this reason, that it's meant to be the last. Now, when it comes to other religions having elements of truth, we actually don't deny that. That's actually not an issue. Yeah, there's elements of truth in many religions. That doesn't make it the truth. Do you see?
Well,
And
how
it's
can Islam claim itself to be the truth when Christianity, Hinduism, Sikhism, and that all say the exact same thing?
yeah. Now you're asking the right question. That what makes Islam different to the others? Is that your question? Yeah.
No, I think they're all the same, actually. I think every religion is really the same.
Okay, so when it comes to pure monotheism, Islam's the only one that claims pure monotheism.
Why is monotheism the truth?
Because whether you're looking philosophically, whether you're looking rationally, if you believe in an all-kind, all-merciful, all-loving God, it has to logically imply the singular and not a plurality.
What's your view on deities?
That's the view. That it doesn't fit the philosophical, rational view. For example, you're dependent, yeah? As a human being, you're dependent on things around you, isn't it? Food, water, etc., etc. The microphone is dependent on the battery, etc. Now, if we continue this, Zarina's dependent on this is dependent on that, and you keep going. Keep going. There has to be an end to that chain. You're more than welcome to jump in if you disagree with that.
Oh, no, continue.
So if it carried on for infinity, we wouldn't necessarily exist. We can't exist because we need an end to that chain for us to even exist. For example, if I was to throw something over there in the park, for me to throw something, I say I need to ask your permission. You have to ask his permission. He has to ask his permission. And if it goes on for infinity, will I ever get to throw something? If we're constantly asking permissions ad infinity? No, because I haven't got the go-ahead. No one at the end of the chain has said, stop, yes, he can throw it. Then he comes back, yes, he can throw it, 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 yes, you can throw it.
Do you think
Then I throw
Malcolm X was a prophet?
it. No, Malcolm X is somebody that believed in Allah and the Prophet. He followed Orthodox
Do
Islam.
you think he was a prophet to some extent because he was trying to emancipate his people from suffering.
He was a phenomenal leader, not necessarily a prophet. A prophet is somebody who's divinely appointed. A leader is somebody that's appointed by the people and through their own merit.
Okay.
So coming back to that point of infinite regress, the end to that chain can only be one. So if we're talking about dependencies, Zarina, only one can be at the end of that chain. Hinduism believes ultimately there is one God, but they believe that there are other deities and the God needs to do this and send this and that and is dependent upon this. We believe as Muslims, God is not dependent on the Trinity, which takes the Christian view out. God is not dependent upon, murtis, idols, which takes Hinduism out.
I pray to a goddess, I pray to a deity.
Well, that's what you do. But what I'm saying is that based on the principle, the Islamic principle, even if you align it with philosophy, philosophically, there has to be one at the end of that chain.
Yeah.
And that one at the end of the chain has to be eternal. You agree with that?
Sure.
Has to have a will, has to have power,
Yeah.
intelligence, wisdom. That's our view of God.
Well, I think I have the same view of God. I mean, for me, the only difference is I view the deities as aspects of the divine. Like, for example, I pray to my goddess and she gives me a lot of strength. And for me, praying to my goddess, I also commune with spirits and with angels. And this actually helps me a lot because I view these, let's say, metaphysical beings as people who help to keep me grounded and to help guide me doing whatever I'm doing. I know a lot of people maybe don't believe in this, but
Zarina, here's the interesting thing. Why would you pray to a goddess rather than God who created the goddess?
because
According to your worldview.
for me, the goddess allows me to actually truly connect to God. For me, it's much easier for me to, I think that's why a lot of people would pray to deities, because praying to a deity can actually give you a lot of groundedness, because the deity, I believe that the deities were actually people's first teachers. I believe that there was a time when the deities actually, well, this is just my belief, but I think the deities actually lived among us at one point on earth, and they were our teachers and they taught us about God, about the divine. And I believe as well that where we're living now, I don't think that the world was like this. I think that once there were actually angels and other kind of beings that lived here with us, and they taught humanity. Some people talk about the Shining Ones or something, some old group of people or whatever, but I believe that these beings actually lived among us and taught and guided humanity, and that they've been lost and there's been a lot of suppression, and we don't really know, I think that we don't really know anything about the old the kind of old world. I think that the world we're living in now is a really strange and quite fake world, and people talk about the Matrix, about this whole world almost being, it's almost like all of that old information and knowledge. I mean, even Islam, I actually think that contemporary Islam, Christianity, Judaism, I think that a lot of things have been suppressed, because I think all of the religions are supposed to be peaceful religions. I think Islam is supposed to be a peaceful religion. I know the Ahmadiyya Muslims, there's a really good Ahmadiyya Muslim guy I've done several streams with called Khalid Safir, and he talks about the revival of Islam. And I truly believe in how there's going to be a new promised Messiah. I believe that these religions actually want to be peaceful, and that these prophets were talking about peace, but their original teachings were corrupted, and people are now using these religions to start conflicts, which we're seeing now in this park with Israel and Palestine. So I actually don't think that people deep down really want to be fighting. I think people want to have cooperation and compassion. I think people want to get along.
You've said a few points. To address your first point about the goddess, the reason why that's not something that, as a Muslim, that would be compatible with our belief of God, is because that's a weakness. When you say, I feel comfortable...
Praying to a goddess is a weakness.
Yeah, of God. I'll tell you why.
I find that very disrespectful.
No, let me explain. Because if I haven't explained, your disrespect is of your assumption of what I'm going to say, isn't it? So the reason why I would say that is because God, when we're saying He's the all knowledgeable, all kind, the lover of all, and there's a technical term, the So you have all of these characteristics of God, yeah? Love is amongst them, mercy is amongst them, knowledge is amongst them. Now, if a person feels that in order for me to get to God, it's difficult for me to get to God, that means that God has not done a good job paving a path to him, and he's put these big punishments in place of heaven and hell whilst making the path difficult. The path by default has to be a path that's achievable by everybody, because the consequence is so severe and because the path has been sent for everybody. Does that make sense? So that's why we would say that if I'm now speaking to you about God, it has to make sense to you. It might not make sense to you now, but logically, even when you're walking back home, you say, you know what, it seems simple, it seems like I might not agree at the moment, but it's not difficult to grasp. If you ask a Christian about Trinity, or if you ask the Ahmadiyya about their promised Messiah, and you delve into what he's actually said, he said some really troubling and worrying things. Like, for example, at a time when the British killed 100 million Hindustanis, yeah, he came up and said, you know what, your oppressor is actually your savior. And he was siding with the oppressor. Numerous other things he said. He would pick a woman like Muhammadi Begum. So this woman has been destined for me. She didn't like him at all. You can search this up, it's on camera. Muhammadi Begum, the prophecy of Muhammadi Begum. And he said, any prophecy of mine that gets proved to be false means I'm not the Messiah. Forget one prophecy, there's at least 10 solid prophecies you can search up, the simple Google search, that will, expose him. But there's only a fringe minority of people. They speak well and they say love of all, hatred for none, and this sort of stuff. And they're welcome to do that. But when you look at their text and the person who they claim to be a Messiah, there's some really troubling acts and things that he's done. One is with Muhammadi Begum, where he tried to force that relationship where she didn't want it. He said, no, but you've been meant for me. If you don't do this, you'll be cursed and you'll be this and you'll be that. That's just one of the things. Another prophecy was him claiming 14th century was the last century. Yeah, Islamically.
We haven't seen the Messiah yet.
Well, they claim that he's obviously the Messiah and he's this. He became Mary, then he gave birth to Jesus. He was Jesus, and then he became the Messiah. So there are a few of those things which next time you see him might be worth speaking to him and asking him. But Zarina, when it comes to God, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 50-year-old should be able to understand the basics of God, of the religion. In Islam, I can explain to a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. There's none worthy of worship besides God, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger of God. That's very simply a summary of what Islam is. Now, if you ask me what is God, I can tell you in chapter. So the difference here is, as a Muslim, we don't go by what we feel. Because the problem is, if we go by what we feel, it's going to change day to day. Like, remember how we discussed right at the beginning. If it goes by our feelings, today I might be feeling positive because, I'm speaking to you and we have a nice conversation. Tomorrow I might not be feeling positive. So if somebody asks me a question, then my answer might be different. So we go by scripture. Because scripture is something revealed by God. Only God gets to decide who he is, what he tells us to do. Because if it comes from us, I personally think that's not only is it disingenuous, but it's somewhat dishonest in the sense that unless if a person claims that they got revelation, how do you know? So revelation is a way of God communicating with us. Again, we can discuss about how do you verify the revelation. You can ask me that. But when it comes to revelation, what God tells us in the Quran is, say he is God the one, the eternal, the independent, does not beget, nor is he begotten, and there's none like him. Very simple definition of God. Independence, oneness, does not beget.
This is a very Buddhist, sort of Buddhist belief as well.
But Buddhists don't believe in a God per se. It's not necessarily a religion.
They say God is oneness.
Their definition of God is different. Yeah, because Buddhism is more a way of life.
Would you not say that Islam is a way of life?
Islam is a religion that constitutes a way of life. religion as per the definition of mainstream people, but technically we believe that the path to God is a way of life. Like me speaking to you politely, I'm doing worship. I'm following Islam.
I
Me,
would say the same thing about myself.
and that's why I said to you at the beginning and previously as well, there's more that unites us than divides us.
I completely agree.
And in order to kind of refine what you're doing, because you coming in the park, I saw you on the side. You're coming, and you're taking time out of your day, and there's certain things that you believe in. You're sticking up for what you believe. I think that's admirable, and I think that's good. And I think Islam, or even if a person doesn't like certain terminologies, God gives us certainty. God gives us clarity. God gives us strength. If God says, look, I am one, I'm independent, I don't beget, nor am I begotten, there's none like me. If a person says, yeah, but there is that aspect of God, or getting to God is like this or like that, a person's giving their own thing. With all due respect, like when I go to, say, a biology professor, I'm going to humble myself in front of him because he's studied, he's got stripes. You know what I mean? Like the guy has studied. With me, like, who am I when it comes to biology? So if God, the all-knowing, He's the one that's told us who He is. He's the one that's given us evidences to get close to Him. Yes, Zarina, you can be a Muslim and you can love a Jewish person. You can be Muslim, you can love a Christian person and a Hindu person and this and you can do all those things. You can be, and say, you know what, I don't like feminism and I respect Tate and this and that. You can do all of those things. But in your life, you will have clarity and you will have direction for those days that you don't want to come on a Sunday.
Well, I would definitely say my worshipping my goddess gives me a lot of clarity and direction, and I think that the way I connect to God is through worshipping my goddess, and this is how I connect to God, and this is what gives me clarity and direction from the goddess I pray to, from the spirits whom I commune with.
What's her name, the goddess's name?
It's the Egyptian cat goddess. I don't like to say her name out of respect.
Oh, you don't even say her name out of respect, yeah?
For me, it's a respect thing. It's the Egyptian cat goddess.
Not saying the name, yeah?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? They say do not take the Lord's name in vain. That's something I take quite seriously.
But just saying her name without vain?
Well, I just don't really like to.
You don't have to, but I'm just curious. Just like, remember the handshake, you were curious.
Yeah.
So this is like a...
Maybe there's a similar thing in a way.
Possibly.
Okay. I will say about the handshake though, for me personally, because I watched the clip when you said about the reason why men don't shake women's hands is because it's seen as a commitment for marriage. Personally,
That's not what I said. That was part of the reason.
Part of the reason.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you said, well, what the part of the reason is. For me, shaking somebody's hands is viewed as a form of endearment, and that's why I find it. I think a lot of maybe non-Muslim people might find it a bit cold when people don't shake hands, or even like hugging, because I think as like people we like physical contact, and I think that a lot of non-Islamic people might feel a bit maybe a bit cold from someone who doesn't want to shake hands or hug them. Even same with like the whole thing of a woman like covering herself. I think a lot of non-Islamic women might take that as a bit
Would you agree with me that Chinese and Indian people make up most of the population on the planet?
Do they?
Yeah, because they've got two of the biggest populations. And Indians, would you agree that... Oh, you need it, yeah? Would you say that Indians primarily follow Hinduism?
Yeah, I mean, but even Hinduism isn't really a real thing, is it? It's not...
No, we'll come to that. And would you say that predominantly Chinese follow Buddhism?
I mean, it's funny because these words like Hinduism, Buddhism, even Islam...
In terms of our understanding.
They've sort of been corrupted because it's like... I mean, look, I want to be very careful as well because I'm not a Hindu and I don't want to misrepresent anything to Hinduism, but I will say that in advance. But I know that regarding these religions, it's as if they've been given these names almost by like somebody else, because it's like what happened was people would kind of follow the religions of their ancestors.
That's fine. We'll come to this, but let's stick with the point, yeah, which is, would you say in China they follow Buddhism and in India they follow Hinduism?
Yeah, they follow these
typically.
schools of thought, yes.
Yeah. In Buddhism, they don't shake hands, they bow.
Interesting.
In Hinduism, they don't shake hands, they join the hands and then they bow.
Interesting.
So that makes up majority of the population of the planet. If you now include 1.8 billion Muslims who believe shaking hands is disrespectful because you are now invading the person's private space. Now think about this now. The only people that have told you that shaking of the hands, nay, even hugging, even the African tribes, if you meet them and you go for a hug, they will deem that to be extremely disrespectful. Now, who has convinced us that shaking of the hands and hugging is the normal thing to do? It's the Europeans. Again, it comes to this whole European-centric, Eurocentric view that this is our way of determining what is right or wrong by what the quote-unquote white man does.
Maybe it's just that different cultures have different ways of expressing endearment. So the French, for example, like to kiss on the cheek. I think that's quite sweet. And maybe it's just that different cultures, the way in which people greet each other, different. Because, like, for example, different cultures would have certain temperaments, and it's like a culture where people are very like, I don't know, very tactile. Like that's part of the culture. Like I know Latin America, for example, they're a lot more tactile and stuff. Whereas I think Western Europe is a bit colder. People are not maybe as tactile. I know there's a stereotype for Germans. I'm not really that well travelled. Just
yeah. That's fine. I mean, it's good you've acknowledged that because, Zarina, when we look at where the information is coming from, that's when we realize, oh damn, like
the world is different everywhere.
Exactly. And Eurocentric view is something that does need to be identified.
Yes, I agree.
And does need to be challenged in moments like this, because especially if you're going to another country and you're saying, oh, they're doing this, that's wrong. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it's like, for example, with Christianity, with the Catholics, when they went to like certain parts of the world to conquer, they said, oh, your worldview is savagery, and they said you're savages and you're savages. And it's interesting, isn't it, how people would come to other cultures and say, your worldview is savagery, like you've got these tribes where women dance around naked, and it's not savagery. Like me saying, oh, you're not shaking my hand is rude, but it's like, well, actually, maybe it's not rude, maybe that's just his way of life. And maybe in order for people to be more respectful of different cultures, we need to actually see that like it's not necessarily savagery or rude or idolatrous, it's that the world is different. And that's why globalism is so dangerous, because they want to sort of destroy people's cultures and have everybody have one world thing rather than saying, no, this culture is different, this culture is different. But I will say, just if it's okay to say on that, I do truly believe that cross-culturally, one universal thing regarding the world, and I think we can all agree on this, and having said this at the park, men and women are different. I do think that regardless of where you go in the world, regardless of your culture, most of the world would agree that men are men, women are women, and there's no such thing as non-binary. That's really the crux of my message, and I actually think that is what is really, really, really destroying the West, is the people have forgotten that men and women are different.
I would undercut that with one other thing.
Sure.
I would undercut that with, where has this thought come from?
Feminism and Marxism.
And where has that come from?
Marxism.
It's come from liberalism, which has come...
No, actually it's come from... Because Marxism is very different from liberalism.
Liberalism with a small L. Philosophical liberalism.
Because classical liberals are also very against feminism.
You're looking at liberalism with a capital L, which is in terms of politics. I'm saying small L, i.e. philosophical liberalism, which is one aspect of which is the splitting of church and state. Yeah, like separating religion and going by like human beings, what we decide.
Okay.
That's what we decide is reigning as well.
That wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because I think a lot of those liberals were actually challenging a lot of the repression.
It was bad. Shall I tell you why?
There was a lot of repression of the church and stuff, so I think they were actually just challenging.
Repression of the church doesn't now mean that you split it completely.
Because the church was sort of abusing their authority, so I think those kind of liberals were just trying to gain back power for the people.
But then when the church was, when that issue was solved, surely should have rejoined afterwards, isn't it? Because once the problem's been solved, then you revert back to what worked, isn't it?
I mean, the problem sometimes with these organized religious institutions is that a lot of them would kind of use religion as a way to abuse their power. And I think ultimately, if we're going to move forward and have a more godly world, which I think both you and I genuinely want, I think a lot of people want, is actually starting to see how religion or following in the path to the divine can be used as a way to actually bring people together, rather than as a way to conquer and divide people and destroy other people's cultures and faiths. I think that was the biggest problem, especially with the Catholic Church.
It's the same with the rise of feminism as well. Like one of the reasons feminism arose, was because people claimed that men were abusing their power. But that doesn't, and this is what you fight for as well, which is that just because that was done doesn't now mean that you erode masculinity completely.
Absolutely. And
so,
also,
so I would say that,
small minority men. I would argue that feminism is women abusing their power. I think feminism from day one was a female supremacist movement.
And Zarina, I would say the same for religion, that if you look at academics like Karen Armstrong, who've written books like Fields of Blood, she's said the same thing, that if you look at majority of the religious wars, they are actually based on politics and geopolitics. And that's where these differences and that's where these issues come from. People will weaponize that and they will claim to be attached to that, but upon closer inspection and analysis, you realize that no, it's not actually Islam that says that, it's not Christianity that says that, it's
people that use these religions and weaponize them for evil. Yes, I feel
so coming back to your point about the goddess, like what's your evidence that goddess exists?
Well, for me, because all ancient cultures used to worship goddesses, and for me this is very important, especially as a woman, because I think that one of the biggest problems with these, say, modern Abrahamic religions is a lack of goddesses and a lack of honoring the divine feminine. And this honoring of the goddess is, the goddess represents that feminine aspect, and I think the feminine aspect of the woman. And all ancient cultures had goddesses, statues of goddesses, and this idea of reverence for the woman and reverence for the divine feminine is important. And for me, this is where I gain a lot of my influence regarding being anti-feminism, because for me, this idea of women tapping into their divine feminine, of being feminine, is actually a very big spiritual underpinning with it, and I gain a lot of influence for that.
Would you say the Western woman is more feminine, or would you say Muslim women are more feminine? In a holistic, general sense? I
mean, neither Western nor Muslim women really adhere to what I consider to be classic femininity, I would say.
Which is?
Well, when I think of femininity, I suppose for me the feminine ideal is this whole idea of, for example, no disrespect to either, but I do see kind of two extremes in a way. Like, for example, the woman wearing a burqa versus a woman being overly promiscuous. These two images of the woman, for me, represent what some women would dub the Madonna and the whore, or the good girl and the bad girl. And this is something that I do see that comes from the Abrahamic religions, especially Christianity. This idea of women are either good and chaste and virtuous, where you cover yourself, cover everything, or overly sexual and over the top. And for me, the resolution with that is the woman being the feminine, i.e., for me, someone who I've always viewed as a feminine ideal is Marilyn Monroe, because I know she's just like a person, but for me, Monroe represents that balance of a woman being, sexy and sensual, but also being, kind and gentle and feminine. Or even you could say the Disney princesses.
Okay, let's stick with your example. That's interesting. Let's break that down. You said Marilyn Monroe. First thing you said was sexy, yeah? So Marilyn Monroe, she would wear obviously skirts.
Yeah, she wore nice elegant
tight dresses. Tight.
Elegant clothes.
Yeah, elegant, which was tight, which was revealing.
Not in the same way that someone like, say, Cardi B or
I agree.
Nicole Scherzinger.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, but nevertheless, showing one's body.
What's wrong with that?
No, I'm just asking. Do you think that's part of...
I think that women are part of... Maybe men don't really understand this, but women by nature want to feel attractive, because I think women by nature want to feel attractive and want to be attractive to men. And the thing is that when a woman is very, very attractive, that actually... I don't know how to explain this. if a woman being very attractive and very desirable increases her attractiveness and magnetism, meaning that if a man goes with her, if other men look at her as being very attractive, it actually makes him appear better. That's why you have the concept of the trophy wife, of, oh, my wife is very beautiful and desirable and other men are looking at her. But the fact that I now come as the man, meaning that I'm the man and I'm in charge, I'm the dominant one. So other men might look at her and find her desirable, but because I'm the man, they're not going to challenge me.
I got you.
Because a lot of, I know, like, for example, like Mad Men, you have this thing, you have these men who are, these very, like, dominant males, and they have attractive wives, but it's like, it's the whole thing of the look but don't touch. And this is a very feminine thing. The desire, I kind of made a joke about it with Mr. Dawa about what if I want you to look at me, and I was joking, but the actual root I was trying to say is that women, part of being feminine, the feminine desire, is the desire to be perceived as attractive. Because, for example, if I was standing there at Speaker's Corner wearing a burqa or hijab, it would not generate the same levels of attention. There's actually a very psychological reason why.
Let's pin this down, though. Let's pin this down. So you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, a portion or part of quality of femininity is showing one's body, yeah?
It's not showing one's body. What I mean is that the desire to be perceived as attractive to other people is a very, very important part of being a feminine woman. Most women... Like,
so you don't have to show your body?
Well, it's because show your body, women, there's a reason why women wear certain clothes, like just, the hourglass shape. Like, women want to have their body shown in a way, but it's like the feminine figure, again, if you think of the goddess, like, if you look at a lot of these goddesses and in the way they dress, they wear certain clothes, it's that idea of looking at a woman in the reverence and the beauty. And I do think that pornography has actually really harmed this a lot, because pornography is...
What's wrong with pornography, though?
Well, pornography has actually really harmed the way that a lot of men look at women, because instead of looking at the feminine body as being beautiful and wow, it's like reducing the woman's body down to like a commodity. So I think that's...
But then with Marilyn Monroe, she shows her arms and legs.
That's not the same as being...
No, but here's the thing, though. Somebody showing her arms and legs, but somebody says, you know what, I just want to be in a bra and panties. Where do you draw the line?
Well, I think Marilyn Monroe was very good at dressing in a way that was elegant and classy and feminine. And I think the same would go for a lot of those Hollywood female icons like Rita Hayworth. And, they would dress in a way that was very, very feminine and showing themselves, but without...
That's not what I asked, though. I'm saying, where do you draw the line?
Yeah. Well, it's also about how it's done, because the way in which they were shown was... they're grown women. They were shown in a way that's very beautiful, but not necessarily in a way that was vulgar. There wasn't a vulgarity to the way in which...
How do we determine where that line of vulgarity begins?
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, I think that... I don't know, I suppose if I compare Gentlemen Prefer Blondes to a modern pornography film, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, you have, Marilyn and then her co-star dressing in an elegant way, and then you have these modern pornography stars. There's a big difference in, like, the modern porn stars are very, very trashy,
We're getting more vague. So let's stick with your hourglass model skirt.
Sure.
Legs being shown, not trashy, yeah?
No, I don't think that's it.
The skirt comes higher, about up to here. That we're seeing little girls, like 9-year-olds, going and they're...
See, that's different, isn't it? Because Marilyn Monroe is a grown woman, she's not a little girl.
No problem, 18-year-old.
Yeah,
or 20-year-old.
Yeah, that's...
Hair, that's trashy?
I mean... Yeah, it's a big discussion to be had for sure, because, a lot of women do generally, in school they say, how long should be your skirt and all that, how much legs
What about you?
show.
What do you think? Because you're the one that's
the way
representing
I don't
this.
think it's wrong for women to show their legs at all. I do think, however,
That's not what I'm asking, by the way. Yeah.
I know, but I think it's good for the viewer to know.
Okay.
I think it depends on where you're going, who you're going with. That's why, for example, a lot of women, say if a woman's going to a nightclub, she's much safer. That's why traditionally, historically speaking, a woman goes with a man, because it's like, oh, she's nice and people are looking at her, but if there's any trouble, I'm the man. I'm the one who's in control of the situation. So
she can expose... So, okay, this is interesting. So you're saying if she exposes a large part of her body, but she's going to a nightclub, you're saying that's all right because that's a place that's acceptable?
Yeah, and also because if her man is there, then it's almost like if there's any problem, he's the one who can step in, kind of thing.
When you say if there's a problem, if a woman is sumptuous,
So if she receives, I don't know,
if she,
unwanted attention.
if a woman is beautiful, let's just say a 9, yeah, she's got bits and bobs hanging out, yeah, in whatever capacity, I mean, you say that this is all right, that's not all right. Would you say that she's not going to receive attention?
Well, here's the interesting thing. If every man was out and if every man was out and every man had a woman who was dressed like that, it would change the dynamic, wouldn't it? Because suddenly it's like, well, we've all got an attractive woman on our arms. So it's almost like, yeah, okay, I might look, but it's like we've all got an attractive girl. So
but then,
a man is not going to be as likely. Whereas now we've got this modern generation
but you're assuming attractiveness is objective.
I think it is.
Free Palestine, nigga.
I think that attractiveness is based on averages. I know I've actually looked into this scientifically. They usually say that women with, well, I'm saying women because women are, more typically more beautiful than men. I think that rude way. But like, female beauty usually comes from averageness. So, for example, that's why women who are a certain shape.
That's the scientific side. But when you look at certain people, based on, for example, certain parts of the globe that they're in, doesn't matter about a woman's face. If she's got her jugs out, with all due respect, a person's not going to be looking at her face. A person's going to be looking at her chest, and they're going to be all over her like a rash. So if we take the logic that you're saying, that if all women just lower the standards of showing their body, then it desensitizes, that's what you're saying, isn't it? It desensitizes the people to the lack of clothing and people can express their beauty. But what you're now doing is you're correlating a person's femininity and beauty with reduction of clothes.
No,
and
I
when
wasn't saying that. What I was actually saying is that a big part of being a feminine woman is celebrating and highlighting female beauty, and a lot of women.
And you're correlating
have always done that.
Yeah, and you're correlating that with, but not specifying specifically to showing parts of the body or wearing tight clothes.
Well,
but here's the counter argument. Let me know what you think about this. Yeah, if a woman is in a burqa and a person converses with her, if a person converses with her, respects her and falls in love with her, as opposed to a woman that's got her big jugs out, that's, waxed her legs, that's done all of that sort of stuff and, color coordinated and all of that, would I be unreasonable in assuming, generally speaking, that the man that's standing in front of a woman that's exposing her body, his falling for her isn't as pure as falling as the other man who fell for the one in the burqa?
It doesn't really make sense to me, because one of the first things a man looks at is a woman's attraction, and it's like, if a woman's wearing a burqa, then where's the sexual attraction?
That's where I said where it came from. The conversation and finding out who she is from what she's saying rather than what she looks for.
You need to fall for a woman, you do need to find her sexually desirable as well. That's where, like, again, if I go back to the Madonna Hall dichotomy, it's actually unhealthy, because that's where you end up. I was talking about this earlier, actually. A lot of men, prostitution was legalized because a lot of men were not having sex with their wives. And I think it's really unhealthy. If a man is married and yet he's not sexually excited by his wife and he feels the need to go to a prostitute, maybe that's a fault of society, of trying to almost desexualize women, where you end up with women either being completely sexless, chaste, virginal women in burqas, or women being these whores. And what I'm trying to say is, surely we should be trying to merge it together, so a man has his wife and whore, for want of a better term, in one woman.
But coming back to the example that I gave, if a man is speaking to a woman with a burqa and then respects her and falls in love with her, any average person can say, you know what, that man is falling in love with her personality.
Why
and just to
burqa for a man to fall in love with my
because that's the example that you used. I didn't use the burqa as an example. You brought it up, that's why I wanted to use your example for you. So with the burqa, if he's speaking to her and he falls in love, like I said, any average person can see, you know what, that person has fallen in love with her soul, with her asal, which means her essence. And that essence, because looks will fade. 10, 15 years, things will start sagging, person will get bored. But it's the personality, it's the spirituality, it's the depth behind the person that is more important. With the woman with the jugs, I'm telling you as a man, and I've got a lot of self-control. But if a woman that's a 9 out of 10 is standing in front of me with her bits and bobs dangling out, that's That's a big test
Again,
for
don't
me.
you think they're just two extremes?
They are, but those are the extremes that you brought up.
And I'm
Sorry.
saying that I think that we shouldn't
No.
have those.
I don't think that the burqa is an extreme.
I do.
But that's why I'm saying we can discuss that. But because you brought up those two examples, that's why I'm using those two examples. So to finish the second example, if I'm with that woman, I can't pay attention to her face because she's got her double D's in front of me. You know what I mean? So it's very difficult for me to listen to what she's saying and respect her for who she is when I'm just seeing that. So now here's the thing. A woman that covers up her beauty, it's more likely that she will be respected for who she is as opposed to what she looks like.
Don't you think it can be both? Don't you think that a woman can be appreciated for her beauty, not in having her jugs up? It's like the way I'm dressed today. Okay, it's cold, but normally I normally wear a dress, right? When it's summer, or even though I'm dressed now, I've got my hair out, for example. Why am I somehow less receptive to respect from a man because my hair's not covered? You see what I mean? It's like, I don't really understand why is it that why would I be less receiving of respect from men for my hair being out compared to my hair being covered? And also, as a woman, if I was, say, engaging with a man wearing a burqa, he's falling for me. For me, there's something, again, there's an inherent sexistness in that because I think attraction, you're obviously completely right that spirituality is so important, but sexual attraction is important. And a lot of marriages fail or break down because of a lack of sexual attraction, especially for men. You know, men are
I agree with
obviously
you. That's
more
very
sexual
important.
than women. And I think that pornography, the two extremes that I perceive is, say, pornography versus the burqa, or even, I'm just using the burqa as a symbol, but we'll say the overly sexual woman versus an utterly sexist, chaste woman. These are two extremes, and I think that this actually harms the way men look at women.
I don't think it's an extreme.
Well, I think it actually harms the way
Yeah.
are able to look at women, rather than seeing women as, it's like if all women dress, let's say if all women university all wore nice dresses and they don't necessarily have their tits overly out, but it was like...
Zarina, let me just finish the example. You know why? Because I think some people will get a bit frustrated that I haven't given one important addition to this, because that might kind of... You know what, bro? Are you there? Is he there?
Sorry, do we want to finish soon?
Bro, just close this, please.
Do we want to finish soon?
We can do, yeah. It's up to you. I don't want to keep you if you don't want to be here.
10 minutes or so. No, just because it's a bit gang.
Sure. That's absolutely fine. With the burqa, I need to add this on because to give it like an accurate representation. So with the burqa, if I'm speaking to a woman and then I respect her and this and that, and you know what, I think she's fantastic. The next step now is I can see her without the burqa. Bear in mind, the hijab and the burqa is only put on when she leaves the home. Her family sees her without the burqa. Her husband sees her without the burqa, so it's only a select few people. Yeah, so that's a very important addition to make, because some people think she's in the shower, she's wearing the burqa, she's with her brother, she's wearing the burqa. No, it's with the people that she shows herself to Islamically. That's the burqa. And I think that was very important to add in, because it's used as an extreme, which it's not. It's a woman, like for example, the corona mask. Many women, when COVID had somewhat ended, they still felt so comfortable in the mask because they didn't get people wolf whistling at her, jeering at her, making passes at her. She was able to just live the way she is. And that I think is a very important distinction to make, because here's the thing with regards to what you're saying. It's not that you're not going to be respected, blanket statement. Objectively, scientifically, the question is, does your hair as a woman have sexual value?
I don't think so.
It's not about what you and I think, because scientifically we look at what the studies say.
It's the color of passion.
Well, that's one of the things. But here's the thing. Scientifically, the woman's hair has sexual value.
What's wrong with that?
I'll tell you. So when a woman's hair has sexual value, that means she's giving off sexual vibes.
Isn't that a good thing?
Not necessarily, because there's a difference between lust and love.
I agree.
Lust-
I think that they go together.
Let me just finish the point, yeah? Because you've got good points. That's why I don't want to just brush past them. So I'll just finish this point and you can just jump in. So you've got makeup on, you've got your hair out. So with the hair, scientifically speaking, there are plenty of studies that have been done to say that hair has sexual value. And when a woman is sexually aroused, her lips turn red. You didn't hear that?
Well, I'm laughing because my lips are red.
Yeah. It's just lipstick. You're not.
Apparently,
Yeah, you're not the only one. But makeup is rooted with a woman making herself more sexually desirable to a man.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
Saying that earlier.
yeah, red lips, rouge, longer eyelashes. So here's now the distinction: do you love that woman, or are you lusting after that woman?
Both.
But that's the thing, though.
You have to lust after the woman that you're in love with so that you can have a sexually satisfying relationship.
But what would you say is stronger, lust or love?
Well,
Immediately.
I think sex should be part of love. That's what I was
It's not about what you think. As a man, what do you think is a stronger driving force for me? Love or lust?
Don't you think they should go together?
They should go together, Zarina, but they don't. As a man, we're driven. Why do you think advertising is predominant? Why do they say sex sells?
Yeah,
Why is it
because
that
we've got a
wait,
society-
why is the pornography industry so dominated and geared towards men? Why are strip clubs mostly populated by men? Why are prostitutes mainly catering towards men? Because the driving force for a man is sex. Yeah, if a woman's standing there and she's got again her jugs out, with all due respect, not interested in love, mate. Like, you look very nice. Let's do something.
So what I was trying to say is that this is an extreme. This is the flip side of the very overly chaste, virginal. I don't use these words because they get misinterpreted. We'll say the overly sexless woman versus the overly sexual woman. And what I'm trying to explain is, do you see how both of these are actually mess up the way men look at a woman? What I'm trying to say is that love and lust should go together. Is that ideally every man should have a lovely.
Ideally, they should.
If we lived in a healthy, homogenous society where it was safe, why would women need to wear burqas?
Zarina, we don't though. That's the reason. Look, Zarina.
Why would a woman need to wear a burqa?
Look,
a lot of the reason
Zarina. Why is it
right.
that men are saying that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man? Why is it women are saying we don't need men? Because we don't live in an ideal society. That's why we need, Zarina, that's why we need you to come to the park and tell us that feminism is trash. Do you see? It's because, look, there is an inherent desire amongst human beings to reduce human effort, to lie, to succeed using the quickest way. As human beings, sorry bro, you got the umbrella? It's just on and off, innit? So what we're saying is, yes, you're right, Zarina, but what I'm saying is that typically, genetically, physiologically, the presence of testosterone in a man means that man is thinking through his private part.
Yeah, I'm well aware of this. And what I'm saying is a potential solution to this could be for women to move away from the whore versus overly.
But there's a bit in the middle that you suggested, and that's why that's why I said that. Look, a woman in a burqa, she's in a burqa because of.
I don't think women really want to wear burqas.
It doesn't matter what they want. Yeah. No. What matters is, for example, look, if somebody comes to you and says, "Look, I want feminism," you're gonna say feminism's trash. Do you see? Like, with all due respect, you're saying it doesn't matter what you want. What is the reality? And look, that's why we're resonating so much, because we're actually more closer than you think. Because, look, this is where we started from. I said that, look, you need an objective morality from God. And if we accept, before the conversation proceeds forward, there is a God, He sent revelation, and He's true what His revelation said. I can prove, I can evidence that you've accepted it. Now it then logically follows what God has said is true. That's why your person of respect, Andrew Tate, has taken this. Now, Andrew Tate is a man of cigars.
I probably agree with what I said regarding women and beauty.
No, because
I don't think he thinks women should wear burqas.
Andrew Tate thinks what the Quran says because he's accepted Islam. When you accept Islam...
The Quran doesn't actually say women should wear burqas, it just says they should dress modestly.
No, the Quran talks about the hijab. The burqa is, generally speaking, women that wear the burqa, they are going above and beyond. Yeah, that's not according to the majority of the Muslims, burqa is not an obligation. Yeah. Now, but the thing now is, when you're titling it as, look, that's an extreme, or that's this, that's that, that's where I will have an issue, because that's an extreme to you coming from a eurocentric point of view.
Sure,
But
I don't think they wear burqas in other societies.
they do.
I mean, again, we're talking about actually like African tribes where women walking around with their breasts hanging out, and it's not perceived as sexual, it's actually perceived as part of the culture, because in those societies they're much more homogenous and stable, so it's actually safe for the women to like not have to like be covered, and also it's hot, so
Yeah, so again, with religion, we're dealing with the whole planet. We're dealing with the whole of civilization, and there are laws, that are applicable to everybody. So that's why it was so important for us to determine that there's a God, there's an objective morality. Now, whatever God says, it's beyond me, it's beyond you, we do it. Why? Because God said so. I believe in God. That's my morality. That's the thing. So the burqa, that's the perception that I was coming from, or the angle that I was coming from. That if a person's a Muslim, it doesn't matter what you think, with all due respect, you're not eating pig. Like if you're a Muslim, you don't eat pig. That's it. If you're vegan, you don't eat meat. You know what I mean? If you are anti, this, then you don't do that thing. So that's where we get our standards from, and that's why it was so important at the beginning that when we get our objective morality from God's arena, it gives us a clear, defined path. When it's like,
completely agree.
yeah, but when a person's like, I feel that this is the thing, or I feel that, that's why with clothing, and if you reflect upon this, you won't be able to convince anybody in the park that X amount of body being shown is correct and Y amount of it being covered is correct. Why? Because left to our own desires, it's...
Again, I was talking earlier about the goddesses, about how, the way they would dress, and how, like, the perception of feminine clothing, and how that was linked to the...
You did. And what was interesting with that is, the point that I wanted to raise was that I would argue that Muslim women are more feminine, depending, of course, on the definition, are more feminine than, say, the Western women. Yeah, feminine in terms of the family unit, family values, in terms of looking after the home, in terms of rearing kids. That's more in terms of, reproducing, etc., etc. These are all issues that Western societies are now suffering
Western
because
women
of
might say
feminism.
That they're more feminine because they wear sexy clothes and high
But that's
heels,
why I'm saying
so.
that we can then discuss
So
and
maybe
debate.
we can have both. Maybe we can have women being, again, not over the top. We can have women being family oriented and being caring and gentle and nurturing.
Let me just finish the point,
but
before I
also
forget.
being, looking nice and elegant and like.
Yeah, we will come to that. But what I'm saying is that you can be feminine, and Muslim women are feminine without the presence of a goddess, by believing in one God, by believing in the Prophet, by believing in the teachings of Islam. They would claim, if they would hear, if they were here and you'd speak to them as well, we are feminine. We don't need a goddess. We don't need, a model with wearing certain clothes to tell us that is all present in the Quran. We don't need, and we're not dependent upon an idol. We're not dependent upon a example. The Quran is sufficient for us. Do you see? And I think that is more powerful when you're not reliant upon things, but you're reliant upon just the one.
But
that is
I
God.
do believe in the one God.
That's
it's
you,
just like
yeah.
connected to one God through the prayer of a goddess who I perceive to be a much more powerful and much more ancient being than many would even begin to understand. Would you like to finish the talk?
We can. I was just going to ask you now. Yeah. You want to go now? Yeah.
Discussion.
Yeah. No. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. It's Jannah, right?
Smile2jannah. Yeah. Smile2jannah. So you've done the Ardurul. Ardurul. Yeah. So yeah, it's Smile2jannah. Smile2jannah just means smile to paradise.
Yes.
Yeah. So
really love. I love talking to intelligent people about interesting things.
Thank you. Yeah. And I wish you the best. And
you too. We should, if you'd like, we can do another one in the future.
Of course. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you for everyone watching.
The microphone. Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, thank you, bro. What time is it? It's a bit of a mad one.
It's about 5:30, I think.
It seems bloody pitch black here.
It's 10 p.m.
It's a mad one, isn't it? It's 10 past 5, bro.
Yeah.
Did Ali come?
No.